The President of the United States.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
I know racism when I see it.
Every single member of this institution, Democratic and Republican, should join us in condemning the president's racist tweets.
Good evening and welcome to DC Tonight Prime. I'm Del Walters. Anquinette Crosby will join us shortly. 5 years ago, I asked this question: why do we hate?
We hate because we're taught to hate. We hate because we're ignorant. We're the product of ignorant people who have been taught an ignorant thing, which is that there are 4 or 5 different races. There are not 4 or 5 different races. There's only one race on the face of the earth, and we're all members of that race, the human race. But we have separated people into races so that some of us can see ourselves as superior to the others. We thought it would work, I guess. It hasn't worked. It has been bad for everyone. But it's time to get over this business. There is no gene for racism. There's no gene for bigotry. You're not born a bigot. You have to learn to be a bigot. Anything you learn, you can unlearn. It's time to unlearn our bigotry. It's time to get over this thing, and we best get over it pretty soon. I'm an educator, and it is my business as an educator to lead people out of ignorance. The ignorance of thinking that you're better or worse than someone else because of the amount of a pigment in your skin. Pigmentation in your skin has nothing to do with intelligence or with your worth as a human being. It's time to get over that.
5 years later, we talk about race, racism, and Black Lives Matter with Jane Elliott. And the only warning we can give you is strap up. But first, the latest. So joining us now from Iowa is Jane Elliott. And Jane, the last time we talked, our conversation went viral. I asked you why we hate, and your response went viral in 60 seconds. So why 5 years after Freddie Gray are we talking about this again?
Because we haven't stopped hating.
So why is it so hard to get this conversation across? And if we're still talking about it, and I know you started in 1960.
Because we haven't stopped hating. We
Yeah.
don't intend to stop hating. We don't intend to stop racism. Racism is a great moneymaker. I think that's what people don't understand. We won't stop it until we stop making money on it.
And that's exactly where I was going, which is that who profits off of hate?
Well, number one, the members of the Business Roundtable profit off of hate. Corporations who pay people of color less than they pay those who are melanemic profit off hate. People who sell housing and substandard housing to people who can't make enough money to buy a decent house profit off hate. People who force people to pay taxes on that substandard housing when they can just barely afford the housing profit off hate. Our president profits off hate. Members of the Senate and the House of Representatives profit off hate. As long as they can keep us against one another, as long as they can divide and conquer, that's how long they can profit off hate, and that's how long they can stay in power. And that's exactly what's happening in this country today, and we're in worse shape than I have ever seen this country. Even through the Great Depression, even through World War II, it wasn't as bad as what's happening in this country today.
When we last spoke, it was after the death of Freddie Gray, and everybody was clamoring for change back then. Now we're talking about Black Lives Matter. Are you convinced that this latest movement is going to achieve anything?
I think that all those people out in the street, and I didn't say all races because they're all members of the same race, all those different kind of people out in the street are going to change this situation. Many of them are young and they realize that there's something very, very wrong. They are realizing, perhaps they've seen the movie South Pacific, in which the last song says, you have to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are differently made, of people whose skin's of a different shade. You have to be carefully taught. You have to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You have to be carefully taught. We have a person in the White House right now who is behaving as Hitler did when he took over Germany and then all of Europe and tried to take over the world. He is dividing to conquer. That's exactly what's happening. And most of it is based on his hatred of those who are of a different skin color. He wants to build a wall on the southern border of the United States. And he has said this openly. We've got to keep those brown-skinned people out of here because brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. Someone has told him the demographics that say within 30 years, white people, so-called white people, who don't exist, but people who are melanemic will be numerical minority in this country. He is scared to death, just as many white people are, supposedly white people, are afraid that people of color are going to want to get even with them when they get on top. And that's what this whole thing is about. That's how he got elected, selected. He wasn't elected, he was selected by 4 electoral college groups who didn't know why Thomas Jefferson put the Electoral College into the Constitution. It was there so that no one who was unfit for that job would ever be elected president. They didn't know what they were doing, and that's why we have this boy grown tall in the president's residence. It's all based on their insecurity as melanemic people and as people who have learned to hate those who are different from themselves.
So Jane, explain something for me that has always been confusing. You're talking about hate, and you would be classified as somebody white. I am classified as somebody black. So you can't say they, you can't say we. So who are the people that want to keep this hate alive? And if it's not all white people, which white people are we talking about? Which black people are we talking about?
It's the people who are living with self-imposed ignorance. We know the difference. We know the truth. We know that it's all a lie. We know that the myth of race isn't a myth. It's the lie of race. A lie is something you make up to justify something ugly that you're doing. The people who were doing the Spanish Inquisition, Torquemada and company, made up the lie of different races. And we have lived with that for over 500 years. It's time to give it up now. It didn't make sense at the time, and it doesn't make sense now. We have to get over it. People who believe this are simply ignorant, and since the information is out there, and if you don't think it's out there, if you want to solve it, if you want something simple to do, everybody should get the April 2018 issue of the National Geographic magazine. And on the front cover are 2 girls, one black, one white, supposedly, and they are twins. Now, would you call these girls biracial? Answer the question. Would you call these girls biracial?
No.
Well, would most people?
Most people,
go ahead,
yes.
Absolutely, they would say they're biracial because that's the word that was used in the 16th and 17th century. These 2 girls aren't biracial unless one of their parents came from outer space. Now, there are pictures of their parents in this magazine. One is melanemic and the other is black. They are not biracial. They came from the same race, which is the human race, which is the only race of people on the face of the earth. If these girls, they don't have to because they know, but if all the rest of us would trace our DNA back as far as we could trace it, we would find that a percentage of our DNA came from a country in Africa, on the continent of Africa. We need to realize that. We need to stop teaching the lie in the schools in this country. We need to re-educate the educators. To educate someone means to lead them out of ignorance. You don't lead people out of ignorance when you teach them that Columbus discovered America. There were people living here before he got here. They discovered it before he got here. And they came here from Africa, and they were black. We call them black, but in fact, they are tones of brown. Their skins were tones of brown, and so is every other human being on the face of the earth. You have a skin that is some shade of brown. See this? This is in that National Geographic magazine. See all these different shades of brown. Not one of the people on these pictures is white. Because there are no white people. We all have melanin in our skins because we all came from the same ancestors that originated, that evolved in sub-Saharan Africa between 300,000 and 500,000 years ago. That is a fact. But as long as you can deny it, and as long as you can lead 30% of the people in this country to prefer to deny it, that's how long you can be president of the United States.
So, Jane, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about any possible solution. Stay with us.